Hi everyone, welcome to Module 2 or Week 2 of APLING 637. And this week we are going to start thinking about the study of language, context, and education. So today I have a different setup for our video. We are going to start right straight into the different concepts and ideas that the three authors that we read this week talk about. And then we are going to move forward with some class logistics and some important things to continue our online meetings. So let me start with a question that I think is at the heart of everything you read this week. So what does it actually mean to do ethnographic research? Not to read about it, not to plan about it, but to actually be in a place with real people over time, trying to understand something that keeps exceeding your ability to name it. So that is module 2 basically, and is really asking you to sit with. And I want to spend the next few minutes not summarizing the readings you already did, but putting them in a conversation with each other and with my own experience as an ethnographic researcher. Because I think that when you see how these ideas live in actual field work, they stop being abstract and start being genuinely useful. So whatever field you're coming from, education, linguistics, sociology, anthropology, or something else entirely different, that background is not a liability in this course. It is exactly what I want you to bring to these readings. Your disciplinary instincts will help you to see these things in the test that someone trained differently will miss. So trust them. Trust that disciplinary intuition. So let's begin. So let's start with Mills and Morton and the design question and the scholarly debate about that. My apologies. And I want to tell you something honestly. When I first read this framing, I found it a little frustrating because it feels like a choice. Like you have to pick a side. But what I learned with my own fieldwork is that the choice is relatively false. Or more precisely, the choice gets made for you by the context you are in. So I was doing my dissertation research in a public high school northwest of Boston, in SEI classrooms with multilingual teachers and students who were navigating English, Spanish, Portuguese, and their own lives at once. And I came in with a design, with a recipe, and I have research questions, and I had a framework, and I had a plan, and I was going to observe and when that will happen. So then reality happened, and what Mills and Morton are really saying underneath the cookie metaphor is that the design is not a destination. It is a compass. You keep it in your hand, you return to it constantly, but you have to be willing to let the terrain redirect you. In a school setting, I learned very quickly that if I came with a rigid plan or expectations about what a given observation session needed to produce, I was going to miss everything that actually mattered. So teachers were under pressure, schedules changed constantly, students had crises, and the field was alive in ways my design have not anticipated. So I found my way into a middle position between these two design ideas. And it was steady and consistent because teachers needed to trust that I was not going to disrupt their work or ask them to perform for me. but also empathetic and flexible, because the moments that did not go according to plan often became the most generative spaces of learning in the entire study. So, Willie says in his writing that ethnography is about being. And I'm paraphrasing here. So move with curiosity about a social puzzle that you are seized to go and look for yourself. I love that. And I love that formulation because it locates the drive for ethnography research not in a methodology, but more in a disposition, in a kind of intellectual hunger that precedes the design. So, ethnography is all about being so moved with curiosity. It's about this social puzzle that you are seized to go and look for yourself. So I think that that was a beautiful quote to understand the experience of being an ethnographer. And Mills and Morton add something I want you to hold on to. The vignettes we write, the scenes we craft from fieldwork are never innocent. They are strategic. As they put it, ethnography or ethnographic writing is a craft, but is often quite strategic. Vignettes and imageries are deployed for a purpose, and the aim is to ensure that the chosen vignette fairly represents and illuminates the larger theoretical issues at stake. So, I wrote a vignette from my first year of fieldwork, and you will find it in this module's discussion board. And I'm not going to describe it in detail because I want you to read it first and then bring your own analytical eyes into the discussion thread. What I will tell you is this. When I wrote it, I thought that I understood what I was saying, and I was wrong, or not fully accurate, or rather I was only seeing part of what was there. And that vignette became the starting point for a much longer analytical journey, and we will return to it later in the course. So this brings me to McGrahan's ethnographic sensibility, which is what I think is one of the most foundational reading of this module for understanding what ethnography research actually demands of you as a person. McGrahan argues that ethnography is not just a method. It is, she says, both something to know and a way of knowing. And at the center of that knowing is what she calls an ethnographic sensibility. So let me read you her definition because I think it is worth hearing slowly. So, an ethnographic sensibility is what makes ethnography matter. It is attention to the conditions and experiences of life as actually lived. It is an attunement to worlds shared via participant observation that extended beyond the parameters of a narrowly defined research question. It is an understanding that the narrow view can only be understood via the wide-angle one and vice versa. An ethnography sensibility requires depth and time. It is a theoretical commitment as well as a methodological practice, in that people's lives are a combination of the predictable and the uncertain. So too does ethnography as a way of knowing about people's lives. Tell us things that are also both predictable and known. It exceeds questions and answers, and its unique contribution is in that space of excess of telling us more than we knew to ask. So the last phrase has always stayed with me. Telling us more than we knew to ask. So here is what that looked like in my field work. I studied teachers in SEI classrooms, and these teachers are under enormous pressure. They are making hundreds of decisions every hour, managing language content, managing other content, relationships, institutional demands, all simultaneously. And when I first arrived, I had my observation protocols, my focus areas, my analytical categories, and then I realized if I insisted on my plan, I was going to become a burden. Another thing they have to manage, another demand on time they did not have. So I made a choice. I decided to flow with the realities instead of imposing my own. And something unexpected happened. The moments when my plans fell apart, when the lesson I have planned to observe was canceled, when the teacher needed to handle a crisis and I sat with the students instead, when the formal interview became an informal conversation in the hallway. So those moments became some of the most richest data I generated in 3 years of fieldwork. And then something even more unexpected happened. As the research moved forward, I found myself slowly shifting from observer researcher to participant researcher. And teachers began to see me not just as someone studying them, but as another voice in their professional community. They started asking me questions about my theoretical frameworks, about what I was finding, about my multilingual pedagogy and my understanding of multilingual pedagogy. And I ended up giving 12 professional development workshops. None of them were in my research design, and all of them became part of my data. How I did that, I really don't know, but I did it. It was a blurry time, to be honest with you. I have so much work to do. And I think that that's what McGrahan means when she says ethnography goes beyond method, because it becomes an ethos, a way of being in a relationship with the people and the context you are studying. And when you cultivate that sensibility, the field gives you things you did not know to ask for. So I want to be honest, though. This is not linear. There were moments of real disorientation. Moments when I felt I have lost the thread of my own research. And what really helped me, which connects back to Mills and Morton, was returning to my research questions, sitting with my memos and my field notes, reconnecting with the analytical frame I had built. Not to restrict my thinking, but to reorient it. The design and the sensibility are not opposites. They need each other. And we need that theoretical and questions or framework compass to guide us when we feel lost. So that brings me to Goffman and a short test that I think is deceptively simple. So Goffman argues in the neglected situation that researchers studying language have been so focused on social attributes of the people speaking, age, class, gender, language background, that they have consistently neglected something more fundamental, the situation itself. He defines a social situation as an environment of mutual monitoring possibilities, anywhere within which an individual will find themselves accessible to the naked senses of all others who are present. And he argues that this situation has its own structure, its own rules, its own logic, that is irreducible to who the participants are. So think about what that means for how we study language in educational contexts. Most research designs ask, who are the learners? What are their languages backgrounds? What are the teacher's pedagogical approaches? These are important questions, but Goffman is asking us to also ask, what is the structure of this situation? Who is ratified as a speaker and who is not? What rules govern when someone can speak, and how and to whom? And what is being made possible or foreclosed before a single word is uttered? So, when I look back at my vignette that I am presenting here to you, the one that I wrote my first year of research and analysis, I can see that I was beginning to notice something about the situational structure of the classrooms that I was observing, and in particular this classroom. The way the teacher managed space and language and relationships simultaneously. But I was not yet seeing it fully. I was attending to the what, but not yet to the how and the why. And what is very important about Goffman is that he is giving us the vocabulary for asking a deeper set of questions. And that vignette, which I want you to read carefully and bring to your own discussion this week, is a window into a situation that has much more in it than my initial framing could hold. So you will encounter more of it later in the course. You will see other vignettes and you will see the final vignette. And for now, I just want this to let you provoke you. So one concrete suggestion when you are reading that vignette is try to read it not for what students say, but for who gets to speak, when and how that speaking is managed. Notice what the teacher does with silence, with turn taking, with who is invited and who waits. That is the situational structure Goffman is asking us to see. Your job is not to answer that question yet, just to start asking it. So, before I let you go, a few practical things about how this course works, and I want to make those things clear. So, I post my responses to your discussion threads in the morning. That means my afternoons are reserved for my own writing and research projects, and I protect that time intentionally in the same way I'm asking you to protect time for your fieldwork and your reading. If you need a response from me urgently, please send me an email and put on the subject the words time sensitive, and I will get those the same day. If your email does not need an immediate response, expect to hear from me the following morning if you email me in the afternoon. I do not work on Sundays and my Saturdays are limited. So if you post or write to me over the weekend, you will most likely see my responses on Monday morning or around midday. And one more thing. We now have a dedicated discussion board for all course logistics and general questions. You will find it in the module level Start Here, which is where the syllabus lives. So please use that board for anything about course structure, requirements, deadlines, or if you are asking questions about the concepts, the readings, use the discussion thread for that module and ask the questions to the group and to me so we can engage more. So the general questions is a space for us, is a space for the questions that will benefit your classmates as much as yourself. And a quick distinction, as I mentioned, the discussion board in each module is for your intellectual respondents to the readings, and that is where the cluster questions live. The Q&A board in Start Here is for everything else Okay? So course logistics, assignment questions, anything about how the course works. So keeping those two spaces separate really helps everyone, including me, and to find what matters in that particular moment. Also, thank you so much for all the videos with your intros or your PowerPoints with your intros. I have learned so much about you, and I will start reconfiguring your leader discussion assignations according to those interests. So I'm going to start searching for other articles or other studies that might connect well with what you intend to do with ethnography and what you aspire to do with this, the learning or the knowledge from this course. So, my friends, I look forward to reading what you bring to the discussion this week. These readings have a lot in them, and I'm genuinely curious to see which questions they open for you, especially given where each of you is coming from in your own research and professional lives. Take your time with the vignette. Read it more than once. Savor it. Embrace it. And remember, what you notice and what you do not notice is already part of your ethnographic education. So see you in the discussion thread. Bye, class.